Over the course of my 15-year-long architectural career, I've encountered a myriad of poorly designed and below average homes. So in this video, I'm going to share with you my entirely subjective but highly opinionated top 10 home-related building products that I really hate. Glass tables. These are a terrible idea for a number of reasons. Firstly, they are impossible to keep clean as they're absolute magnets for fingerprints and watermarks, which are only emphasized by the fact that they're the only part of the surface that ends up becoming opaque. They're also heavy, expensive, and fragile, which makes them incredibly difficult to move, whilst being a pretty scary safety hazard if they do happen to break. And because they're see-through, if you've gone for a single panel of thick glass for something like your dining table, they are incredibly easy and painful to bump into, as they're so thin, hard, and difficult to see. Sure, they can look fantastic by appearing to take up less space, making your room feel larger, but unless you want to find yourself constantly armed with a spray gun and a microfiber cloth, a different surfaced dining table is far more practical and a lot more forgiving. And in my opinion, natural materials like timber are much better looking too, as they add a ton of warmth whilst being entirely repairable too. And if the illusion of space is something that you are into, beveled edges and pedestal legs can give you this same effect without using an expensive and fragile fingerprint magnet as the surface for your food and drink. Kitchen bins. Despite being an unfortunate necessity, I think that it is absolutely ludicrous that there is a place in the market for $1,000 trash cans. It's bad enough having to spend money on garbage at all, but the fact of the matter is that bins are a part of life and they do need to be on hand and easy to use, which often means that they're left out in the open for everyone to see. Despite there being several somewhat elegant designs out there, I do feel like that they always tarnish the look of an otherwise very carefully designed or curated space, regardless of how much you might choose to spend on one. But because at the end of the day, a bin is still just a bin, even if it comes with fancy sensors that never tend to work, or beautifully crafted foot pedals that always tend to break, they're still a bit of an eyesore. Additionally, you really also want to have at least 2 in your kitchen in order to separate wet and dry waste, unless you're okay just using one massive stinky sack. So our household personally splits waste into organics, non-recyclables, recyclables, and sanitary waste, which is just usually reserved for the bathroom. But when following this principle, what often happens is people keep those small organics bins on their kitchen countertops, which are full of warm, rotting food, which is equally as unpleasant. And you don't really want to be reminded of these things in the middle of the area where you choose to prepare and consume food, especially as more of our homes are now having our dining areas in the kitchen. So the solution to this madness is to keep organics and non-recyclables hidden underneath your kitchen sink, providing organics with a bin that's large enough in order to help them dry out, whilst importantly keeping them out of sight, where you can implement a ton of great options for making this as sleek and as practical as possible. Then when it comes to recycling, as it's usually bulky and quite clean, it can be kept somewhere like a pantry or a closet out of view, even in something as simple as a box if needs be. But if you are in the market for a kitchen bin, I would highly recommend freeing up space in these areas underneath the kitchen sink and in something like a pantry or a closet by spending your budget on additional storage furniture rather than wasting an obscene amount of money on essentially what is a glorified bucket. Stone veneer cladding. For some reason, it seems that nearly every other new home here in BC has this absolutely horrid stone veneer cladding. I've come to absolutely hate this cladding type, and it's not even because it's objectively ugly. Up close, as a material, it looks great, as it has tons of character and texture, as well as durability and weather resistance, but more often than not, I see this paired with timber cladding in a way that doesn't follow any of the real-world limitations of stone construction. So what happens is when you look at these huge stacks of tiny stone randomly interspersed between sections of timber, it's pretty obvious that it's not real and it's just been stuck on, providing the same type of tacky feeling that you tend to get at theme parks, where everything that you see and touch sits in this kind of awkward, uncanny valley, as your mind subconsciously knows that none of the landscaping or buildings that you're actually experiencing are real. Imitation cladding products like these do often actually make a lot of sense when it comes to things like thermal performance, sustainability, and weatherproofing, which makes them illogical to rule out. But in their application, to at least sell the effect of the material that they're trying to imitate, you do have to follow the laws of physics that apply to that material, despite new possibilities potentially being opened up. So for instance, if you can't afford to clad an entire home in stone, it can work to only use it at first level, as this is actually a realistic scenario if you don't want to commit to cladding the entire building, which is far better than just gluing it to half of the front facade. But in my opinion, and as a general rule, materials that actually have relevance to the context that they're placed in tend to work best by referencing local construction techniques, neighbouring buildings, or local heritage sites. Cooker hoods. They are an essential piece of kitchen equipment, but when you take a closer look at how they're actually designed, you may realise how much wasted space there can be above them. And considering how a lack of storage is such a big problem in a lot of kitchens, this is often an area that gets completely overlooked. What's more, cooker hoods are also massive dust magnets, which are only made worse through the sticky oil vapor that tends to gather on top of them, leaving you with this dusty, sticky residue that you have to clean up. And because they often project past the wall of cabinets in your kitchen, any sharp corners can also make them a little bit of a safety hazard. But for the most part, I think that they just look really ugly. So as an alternative, in North America, it is quite common to see what are known as over-the-range microwaves, which can be a great space-saving solution by combining these two bulky utilities together. However, if you're relatively short, having to reach up to retrieve something like a scalding hot bowl of soup might be a daunting task. And it doesn't really help that wide door swings at this height can cause a nasty bump to the head if you're a little bit taller and happen to catch your head on one of the corners. So as a much better alternative to either of these solutions, I think nearly all kitchens are best fitted with built-in extractor hoods, which leave you with enough space above them for storing things either side of the ductwork, while increasing functionality and providing a far cleaner look than independent extractor hoods or over-the-range microwaves. Drain boards. These are another incredibly frustrating product that I hate seeing specified in kitchens, as they unnecessarily prescribe the usage of the space that you have next to the sink, essentially making this space entirely redundant for any other use. My old London studio apartment was a prime example of this, as it had the cheapest possible stainless steel sink and drain board fitted in one of the tiniest kitchens that I've ever had to live with. What's just as frustrating is that a drainage board encourages plates and cutlery to be left on display, which only adds to the cluttered appearance of a space, and because water is constantly dripping onto it, it can quickly lead to limescale buildup, which is neither pleasant to look at or easy to clean. But however, if you do have one of those absolutely ridiculous quartz composite matte black sinks, I can pretty much guarantee that you are going to be left cleaning that thing every single day. In my opinion, you're just far better off getting a regular inset sink and using a drainage mat, which doesn't show watermarks or water droplets, and they're machine washable, which makes them far easier to clean too, as you just have to toss them in your washing machine. But if you do happen to be remodeling a brand new kitchen, you can go a step further to completely banish this clutter from your countertops by installing a drainage rack inside the cabinet above your sink, which I think is one of the best things you can do in a small kitchen, as it can also double as vertical storage for all of your plates too. Cheap handles and switches. Whenever you go into a relatively new home or apartment, by default there always seems to be the cheapest, most plasticky switches and outlets on all of the walls and the most budget handles fitted to all of the doors. This is frustrating for a number of reasons, but mostly because the majority of people aren't comfortable changing things like door handles and switches. So what ends up happening is people end up being left with the most generic and characterless fixtures available simply because it's too wasteful and too much hassle to swap them out for new ones. This is probably one of my biggest pet peeves because these are parts of a building that you actually touch and interact with, which is a massive part of your emotional connection and memory of a space. So in my opinion, it's an area worth spending money on. You can massively improve the aesthetic of items like these with features such as concealed fixings and low-profile faceplates, but when it comes to touch, there is a noticeable difference to using more premium materials such as powder-coated or brushed metal if you have the budget for them. But if you are considering replacing all of the outlets in your home, it's a great opportunity to update them with features such as USB-C, which is a great investment and a very desirable thing to have as part of your home. Radiators and baseboard heaters. Now, in colder climates, heating your home is a big deal, but it uses a ton of energy. So it does make sense to at least consider alternative ways to efficiently heat our homes. Now, underfloor heating is a vastly improved way to heat your home as it takes up zero floor or wall area, it does a better job of retaining heat, and it makes you feel warmer too as you're actively touching it by walking on it. But despite the progress that has been made in these technologies, it's still unfortunate that many homes and apartments are still specified with radiators and baseboard heaters, despite them being far less efficient and discreet. So because of this, many of us are stuck with heaters that can't have furniture or curtains placed up against them, which when living in a small apartment or home can be an incredibly important thing to have. So if you are considering reflooring a home, this is definitely something worth considering, with hydronic underfloor heating being the more efficient of the two options if you have the space for it. Kitchen cupboards. This is less about the product itself and more about the way that it's used, where, in my opinion, kitchen base cabinets should almost never be used as cupboards. This is for several reasons. Firstly, with low cupboards in general, you're forced to squat down in order to see whatever it is that's inside. Second, it's near impossible to reach anything at the back of them without knocking over every single item in front first. Their doors can also get easily ripped off their hinges at this height, and they often waste a ton of space around and above whatever items you choose to keep inside of them. And when it comes to storing heavier items like Dutch ovens and mixers, you usually have to slide them out of the cupboard and then onto the floor first before readying yourself to then pick them up, which is a process you can eliminate almost entirely with heavy-duty drawers. Wire drawers can be a somewhat useful band-aid solution for smaller cabinets, but they can be a little bit clunky because they don't have a solid base. So really, I would say your best bet is to just retrofit the real deal, especially if you have wide cabinets that you need to store multiple heavy items. I fully appreciate that yes, they are more expensive, but homes are expensive. So if you're spending all of this money on a home or on rent, it makes very little sense to waste expensive square footage to poor storage solutions that are also a pain to use just in order to save some money. Carpet. It's super dusty, hard to clean, and incredibly unforgiving if you happen to spill something like ink or wine on it. Because of carpet's unforgiving nature, I would keep this exclusively confined to the bedrooms, as you don't really want this near high traffic areas or those which are prone to receiving spills or dirt. However, I would even go a step further and say that if you are considering recarpeting a room, it might be worth holding out until you have the budget to refloor your home with a more durable material like click-lock vinyl or engineered timber. And I say this as it not only allows you to enjoy the added durability and ease of cleaning that comes with these hard floors, but it also adds to the value of your home, making it somewhat of an investment too, which tends to be just because it has a broader appeal to people who have allergies, or people who have small children, or people who have pets. However, getting a warm and soft surface underneath your feet can be easily achieved by purchasing an easy to clean and versatile rug, which in my opinion just makes it a great all-around choice. Vertical blinds. This is another case of spending hundreds in order to save pennies. I know that, at least in the UK, it's quite common for people to specify vertical blinds for larger windows because they can provide a lot of coverage with relative affordability. But when it comes to functionality, they make a ton of noise, so you can forget leaving the window open or having a fan on. They're also fragile and quick to wear out, so you can forget having them around kids and pets, and they really do very little in the way of privacy when trying to modulate light from entering into a room, as from the outside, at certain angles, it can look as if there's nothing there at all. Besides all these downsides, they can also just make your home look really dated too, where in my opinion, you're far better off going for cellular or roller blinds for an incredibly simple yet functional solution. But if it's a question of the best bang for your buck when it comes down to functionality, durability, and cost, you cannot beat full height curtains, which when paired with a layer of sheer curtains behind them, they can add a ton of character and softness to your space, whilst also providing great privacy with increased thermal and acoustic performance, with the option of fully blocking out light from entering rooms like bedrooms, which is great if you're into taking your sleep as seriously as we all should be. But as a more positive note to end on, I want to take a moment to let you know about some great design that I really love, which is this bag from Bellroy, who are the sponsors of today's video. Before you click off, I chose, ordered, and paid for this bag with my own money, as I really do love it so much, because unlike bad design, which doesn't do its job properly, this does the exact opposite by being lightweight, durable, and functional for me to easily fit my entire remote work setup inside of it, whilst looking 99% better than the other bags out there, so I never look out of place regardless of the setting that I find myself in. Inside, I can fit my laptop inside this super soft sleeve, my iPad mini, notebook and pen inside this secondary pocket, my headphones and flask, my mouse and external drive, and in the front pocket, it easily fits in my power bank and charger, all with plenty of room to spare for things like jackets, cameras and snacks. And all of this is just complemented with really considered leather detailing and clever features like hidden pockets. But if you're as interested in this stuff as I am, Bellroy actually also make a ton of alternative bags to this one, as well as equally impressive slings, wallets and cases too, with options and colours to go with pretty much any use case or outfit. So if you're interested, which I definitely am, be sure to check them out and get 10% off using the link down in my description below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.